Hello, everybody. It's me, Cowboy Live, and I was contemplating making a video about football, of course, today, but the mood just did not hit me to do that because in the sight and what's all that's going on, and also the pandemic and everything. I just felt I needed a little more time for that. To do it another day and still react to what's going on around America with the ongoing racial strife caused by law enforcement, as they always have been throughout history. And so, but I wanted to tell you that I got on Facebook this morning and I wrote a little dialogue of what I felt about what was going on and linked it to history in American history in the past. So I'm gonna read it to you from what I posted on Facebook on this video, and it basically goes back to the Revolutionary War, and it's factual. It can be factual. It could be you can look it up and see it because it happened. Because everybody should know their history. And I know American history, I know African history, I know a lot of history. I'm not saying I know it all. There's a lot to learn. Still more a lot to learn. But I've armed myself with knowledge many years ago, and I never stopped. So anyway, I want to start with now. How did we forget our history? Before the Revolutionary War, there was nearly 100 riots against the British authority that ruled the American colonies leading up and into the Revolutionary War, including 30-plus food riots where looting stores and attacking merchants happened frequently throughout the period. How many children were taught since this country's founding that the Boston Tea Party was a blessed event, celebrated to this day, where men called the Sons of Liberty, dressed like Indians, and destroyed the tons of government property, products such as tea, and vessels where there were held on defiant act against the British for taxing the colonists without representation in Parliament. People are not aware that many who became founding fathers were against the rebellious act. People such as George Washington and John Adams tried to get the Sons of Liberty to pay the taxes on the tea they destroyed in the harbor. Many of the colonists that were businessmen and property owners looked down on the act against their authorities. However, realizing that the tidal wave of hate for the authorities grew out of control, riots ensued in many forms. In fact, the catalyst that propelled the American Revolutionary War was the riot in Boston, Massachusetts, known as the Boston Massacre, where 5 colonists were shot and killed by British soldiers when a fight broke out between them as rioters threw clubs, rocks, and snowballs at the troops. The first shot was a black man named Crispus Attucks, who threw the first blow. Subsequently, a trial of the incident took place when soldiers and civilians involved were all arrested as tensions grew everywhere. The lawyer who represented the British soldiers was a man by the name of John Adams, who defended the clients by telling the court that the people that were killed by the soldiers were a motley rabble of saucy boys, Negroes and mulattoes, and Irish teagues, and outlandish jacktars. And as pointed out that Attucks was the one who struck the first blow and led the dreadful carnage, Adams concluded that the mad behavior of Attucks provoked the soldiers' response, saying that Attucks' group was under the command of a mulatto fellow whose very looks was enough to terrify any person. In essence, they were feared for their life. Does that sound familiar? Anyway, even then, they blamed the horrific event on black men, later used as a catalyst to arm the people against the British. It's been suggested that the right to bear arms and to defend yourself is only the privilege of the white race. Nothing more telling of that fact that during the civil rights and black power movements, the blatant disregard of African Americans' rights to bear arms against the rushing tide of police terrorist acts was on full display in today's America. What's interesting about the time during the Revolutionary War is the main components of citizenry that were against the uprising of the British Crown were involved in the signing of the Declaration of Independence as the war between the 13 states and the British Empire began to rage. George Washington and John Adams, who first supported the British imposing more taxes, became presidents number 1 and 2, respectively. And I thought that was interesting. And so I posted that on my Facebook, and I wanted to get that out, and because it's clear to me that people see it differently today, because once now the British were defeated, with everybody involved who were from different backgrounds and defeated their enemy. What's interesting is that once the British were gone and America fully took control, the Americans took control of the land, and we know that what ensued from that point on. The thing is that after that they were like taxes needs to be imposed after the British are gone, and that's when we got the Whiskey Rebellion, because they made the soldiers and everybody else pay taxes to help pay for the war. Not only that, slavery was continued from that point on, when they made promises that everybody would live in brotherhood. And so it was sickening, because years later we had to fight this Revolutionary War to end this crap, this bullshit. So the point I'm trying to make basically is that anything that changed drastically in America that needed to be changed wasn't done by peaceful means. It never was. It was done by bloodshed. It was done by standing up against authority. It was done by fighting back against those who try to hold you back, such as the British, okay? And so now, today, we have so much former people in government who, like I said before, in the previous video, that they are more like the British than anything else. Because even today, we grew up with the phrase that you can't fight City Hall. You see what I mean? It's a change of power now that are in place that says that this is the way it's got to be and this is the way we're going to keep it, which is bullshit, because we know what history tells us and teaches us all. Nothing changes. And your ability to survive as a nation, it revolves around changing. And there's a lot of assholes out there who are very racist in this country who decide that they're not going to freaking change no matter what. And so that's why they've been left. That's why they are the vanquished. That's why they're left on the outskirts of the democracy, and democracy keeps rolling on. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. And I'm like I said, I just didn't have that mood to try to make a video about the Dallas Cowboys today and Dak Prescott and what's going on, because it just didn't fit the time right now. But believe me, my heart is still with love for sports and people and what's going on. But I just want you to know that this thing we're talking about, people destroying property. They were destroying property all along since the entire phase of the revolution back then. They was destroying property, and riots ensued during the civil rights. The Civil War, because more insurrection happened in that time from one end of the country to the other that promoted slavery and threats of human carnage all across America. And so people fought, and they're going to continue to fight until things are right or things are changed. So those who sit there and tell you that the rioters are wrong, I know there's people out there who might be right for themselves, because that happened back in the time too. Those who rioted for bread in the lines, they went and got food and took the food and then beat or killed the merchants and ran off. But it didn't stop the Revolutionary War to continue. You understand? Where people were telling people to stop doing what you're doing, pay the tax, and let's move on with our lives. Remember the Tories who back in the time of the Revolutionary War, who supported the British, okay? They supported the British throughout the war. And they supported the crown. They loved the crown. They felt themselves as British citizens, even though they didn't have no representation, okay? The problem is that they became the conservative party of their day, And when the British lost the war and the Americans won, they scorned and scoffed at, even though they still had a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of businesses and stuff. They used that time to create the Conservative Party, which turned into the Democratic Party. But in reverse, the Republican Party was the one who helped engineer the release of the slavery and can change things. They were the progressive party of their day. Though they were called the Republican Party, things, like they said, things did begin to change in years past, because once you won the war, which was the spoils of war, which was what happens naturally, Americans who were who were Republicans became more powerful and more rich because they controlled the area and controlled the commerce. And that's what basically happens naturally. So then you got other things that happened in history that changed hands during the Reconstruction and everything. So, but I'm trying to tell you is that looting is part of what happens when you're trying to when things happen and become the language of the unheard, which is that Dr. Martin Luther King put it. All right, and I'm not saying this is right. I'm just telling you that's what history bears out in all fronts. History bears out always. And it's like, even if they won the argument, or if they won the day, looters took place, and that means they won the spoils of the day. I'm not saying it's right, but that's what happens. And it happened to many times, whether the crowd that did it was white, or crowd that did it was black, or both together. And that's history. That's what happened in America. That's all. Thank you.